Welcome to the Real Freedom Show, where we inspire you to pursue your passion to gain time and financial freedom through opportunities in real estate. I'm your host, Mike Swenson. Let's get some real freedom together. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Real Freedom, where we're talking about building time and financial freedom through different opportunities in real estate. I am your host, Mike Swenson, and today we are going to be talking with Kevin Link. Some amazing things about Kevin. So we talk about this a lot. People come from other industries into real estate because they see something. There's something that they're not getting in their past job. There's something that they want in real estate to enhance what they're doing. But people are always searching for something. And so I love interviewing people that come from other industries. And so Kevin's background actually was a FINRA attorney, so Financial Industry Regulatory Authority attorney. FINRA, if anybody has heard of FINRA before, came from a law background, got into real estate in 2017, co-founded Four Brothers Buy Houses. And so you are based out of the Washington, D.C. area doing flipping and wholesaling, and then also co-founded 1,000 Flips, game-changing real estate investment company. And you've got a team of people working behind you, obviously a big part of your growth with that, and turning real estate rookies into real estate pros. So Kevin, welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be on.
Why don't you just start with a little bit of background of your previous career in law? What excited you about real estate, or what were you looking for? And we'll go from there.
So it's, as you mentioned, so I was practicing law. I practiced for 7 years, and was working for FINRA, which is a regulatory body that looks at broker dealers like Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, and regulates them. It's supervised by the Securities and Exchange Commission. So I was doing litigation for them and looking at like insider trading and these types of things, securities fraud, anything to do with the market. So entirely unrelated to real estate, really no overlap whatsoever. That's what I went to law school for, was to study securities law. That's what I ended up doing. And I never really had a passion for real estate. I'm not sure that I still have I have like a passion for real estate. People say I don't really know what that means when it comes to real estate, but there are a lot of things I like about working in real estate and being self-employed and financial freedom and some of the things that you mentioned at the beginning of the show. But I was practicing law, sort of no intention of leaving the law. Pretty happy in my career. But I was working for other people, and my partner in the 2000s started kind of flipping houses on the side, and he did one other. We talked over the years about sort of both leaving our respective jobs and coming together and making it a full-time thing for the benefits of kind of having a greater ability, more, you're not limited to sort of making as much money as somebody else tells you that you can make, number one, and working for yourself and having sort of the freedom and stresses that come along with being self-employed, but having not, you don't have to answer to anybody else. So I was practicing law, and we were just over the years kind of talked about it on and off. And I got to a point where I felt like I wanted to do it. He wanted to do it. We had a lot of work to do because it was just the two of us. I mean, the company is now 25 people, but back then it was just the two of us. And I was also leaving a pretty safe, secure job that I had gone to school for and, paid to go to school for, and spent 3 years getting a law degree. So it was kind of a big move. But my boss's jokes, I will tell you this, Mike, were not getting any funnier, I noticed. And so I kind of just felt like, if I don't do this now, I'm not going to do it. I'll just, in 20 years, I'll still be an attorney. It just isn't going to happen. So for me, it wasn't this thing where I had this like, long lost love for real estate. It was more, this seemed like a path where I could sort of gain more financial freedom and kind of dictate my own growth financially, have my more freedom. And so I kind of took the plunge. I think a lot of my colleagues at the time at FINRA were sort of scratching their head It just sort of came out of nowhere. It's like I told them I was leaving to go to clown or something, and they were just sort of like baffled. But that's why I did it, and I'm glad that I did. Although I would say, the first year, 12 to 18 months were tough. I mean, it was just the two of us. And I didn't have a background in real estate. I had to kind of figure it all out. So wasn't an easy choice, but in retrospect, I'm very, very glad that I did it.
So talk about that learning curve in real estate. What did you do previous to that going into it, or maybe when you got started in terms of identifying a path? So you guys started in flipping, correct? So what did you do to educate yourself to build that momentum leading into starting with flipping?
Yeah, so I didn't really have any background. My partner had done some flips at that point, so he had some knowledge on front and had some experience with marketing and finding these deals. But we wanted to figure out a way to make it a full-time thing and then scale it. So I, we really focused at the beginning on sort of ramping up on the marketing, and we used a variety of marketing channels then, and direct mail, pay-per-click, search engine optimization, cold calling to find leads. The real sort of getting scaled up was figuring out our sort of processes where we could get consistent inbound leads. We had a process to talk to these leads, figure out which leads had promise, which didn't, go out, see the properties, and get them, get a contract signed. That was the big sort of bottleneck, is learning how to generate leads, but more than that, go out and get a signed contract to buy the house. And so, my partner knew enough about construction that when we found properties and we were able to buy them and flip them, but the way that we ended up really growing is by figuring out wholesaling. So we were all, for the first year, 9 months maybe, we only were doing flips, but there's just a limitation to what kind of volume you can do there. In terms of how many houses can you really work on at one time and purchase, and how much capital do you have. So we wanted to be able to sign, 10, 15, 20 contracts a month and flip some of them and wholesale the rest, and do more volume and generate additional income through wholesaling. So that was a big part of the learning curve too, is figuring out how to set up a wholesaling apparatus where we would have buyers who would buy our properties, and how, where we could have the infrastructure to handle the volume, and figure out a way to sign 20 contracts in a month too. So the first year was pretty tough, in terms of kind of every component of the business we had to figure out, in terms of scaling it. We'd never wholesaled a house before, and he had never done one house in a month. So we were trying to go from 1 to 20. There's a lot of pieces to figure out. We've certainly made a lot of mistakes too. I'll tell you that for sure.
Going back to having studied a lot of people that have done a lot of different strategies in real estate, you're right. In terms of the flipping piece, your bottleneck is really the money and the crews to be able to do stuff. With wholesaling, you can do as much as you want because it's just connecting sellers and buyers. And the nice thing is you're still having the same conversations as you are with people on the flipping side. It's just, is this a property that I want to flip, or is this a property that I think somebody else might want to do something with? And so you can kind of run as fast as you want down that lane, cherry pick the flips that are the best for you, and wholesale the others. So how did you go out and find, I know you talked about being able and finding deals. So in terms of then those wholesale contracts, the people that are, purchasing these properties from you or that you're assigning them to, how are you finding those folks?
And I mean, I think I think you're exactly right, because you can also, there's also lots of properties that you come across that even if you had the capital, maybe you don't want to flip it because of where it's located or whatever, but somebody else might. And so you can kind of monetize properties that you otherwise would just take a pass on. But in terms of developing like a buyer's list, of all the things that we've had to figure out with wholesaling and flipping and building a company, I think building a buyer's list is the one thing that I don't think there's a shortcut to. I don't think there's like a magic bullet, like there's not a sort of a way to sort of pivot, turn around, and all of a sudden you have all these buyers. Um, there are programs and software out there designed to sort of match people up with buyers, and that's a sort of could be a segue and as you build a buyer's list. But what we ended up doing was just partnering up with somebody who had an established buyer's list at that time that we knew trusted, and then he would disposition sell all of our wholesale deals for us. He would advertise them, have somebody go out, handle the showing. He would do all of that for us, and then we would pay him a piece of the deal. And during time, we just sort of slowly built up our kind of buyers list by meeting people who came to the showings, by just meeting more people who were flippers by virtue of wholesaling. But it's slow. I mean, it takes time when you add people. Then those people have to feel comfortable working with you and get to know you. So it wasn't until really like 2019, maybe middle of 2019. It took a good chunk of time, more than a year, for us to sort of get to a point where we could kind of wean off of working with somebody else. And we had enough depth to our buyers list that we could, kind of get out there and sell our own deals. But it was still another couple of years before we really fully broke away from wholesaling with the other individual that I mentioned, because some properties would come up and we just didn't have anybody on our buyers list that was interested, but he had a deeper buyers list. So it took several years for us to get to the point where we were sort of totally self-sufficient. And to me, that's kind of the only real way to do it right. I don't know that there's a shortcut. I mean, there's other, like I said, there's pieces of software, there's ways that you can advertise. You can advertise on Facebook and stuff like that, find buyers here and there. But to develop like a really deep buyers list that will sort of always deliver no matter what the property is, I think that takes time.
Right. And would you rather have 100% of zero? If you can't move
Yeah,
something, right?
yeah,
Better to leverage somebody who can move a property and you
yeah,
take a piece of it. At least you're getting something versus nothing. So
exactly, absolutely. It's like I think I may have said that same phrase out loud like 15 times to my partner, like because he was more frustrated than I was that we were doing this, like pairing up. It's like I know a way that we can get none of the revenue. So yeah, that's absolutely true. And I encourage people who are getting started to, because there's a lot of stubbornness, I think, in real estate. So a lot of investors that I meet are like just hell bent on selling their own deals at whatever cost, like even if it's at a worse price or whatever, or even not selling it, having to let the deal go. They just are so driven to do it 100% themselves for whatever reason. And I think that is sort of, cutting your nose off to spite your face to some degree. And also there's a trust thing. I mean, there's a lot of like bizarre people in real estate, as I'm sure you know. So you gotta be comfortable with who you get in bed with. But yeah, I think it's good advice for people who have limited number of buyers to really find somebody in their market that they truly trust. I think they would find themselves better off working with them until they've built up a better buyers list.
now, in terms of finding properties, certain neighborhoods, maybe certain types of properties, what was kind of your sweet spot, or what were the things that you looked for in identifying the properties that you wanted to flip?
I always tell my sales staff, I mean, we are looking for properties that where the person wants to sell the house and that it might work for cash. And whenever I say that, people in my team just roll their eyes at me at this point. But uh, they're like, I'm not sure that's going to pass for insight, Kevin. But it is, I always say like we we want somebody who's going to sell in the next like 1 to 3 or 4 months, like who's actually selling, because we deal with tons of tire kickers in this industry, right? When you send out marketing, you get people who call and they're curious about an offer. I might sell next year. If you gave me $1 million, I'll sell tomorrow, whatever it is. So figuring out, okay, is this person actually selling their house? Number one, and number two is the house slash situation something that would be appropriate where they might want to take a cash offer. And I think a lot of people kind of get bogged down. Like, is the house a complete and total like dump? And it doesn't have to be. There's tons of people that want to sell their house that houses that are perfectly livable, reasonable condition. They just don't want to deal with a real estate agent for whatever reason, or they just don't want to deal. So what I say is it something that can work for cash? There's a variety of factors that go into that. One would be condition. That's often a good indicator. Speed at which they want to have the house sold. Another thing is whether, how sort of keen are they to spend the time and fix anything up or deal with a real estate agent. Some people just don't want to work with an agent. So it is, we try and suss that out over the phone before we go out and meet them. To somebody that might be, is this person inclined to take an offer that would be less than they could get if they sold on the MLS, but they understand that and appreciate that there's some conveniences and those conveniences are worth whatever that delta may be. We end up buying a lot of properties that are in like pretty reasonable condition as a result of that.
Now, in terms of financing, I know a lot of times, people say cash offer, and the people that are out there looking for the cash offers picture there's just this person out there with this never-ending supply of cash that they can just drop down. How are you financing those properties? And then kind of the follow-up question is, in terms of competition, how many other people have they talked to? Is it, yeah, you're the first person that's given me a cash offer. I've already talked to 5 other people and I'm just looking for the best offer.
Yeah. So, in terms of, I guess the cash piece, I mean, we have sort of gotten the company to a size where we could sort of buy most of the houses that we come across that we would want to buy, but that's hasn't always been the case, that's for sure. And so I think that sort of also goes to be able to provide to do with these properties when you get them. I mean, you're not going to be able to buy them, especially at the beginning. So, um, I think as anybody who wants to get into flipping, investing, whatever you want to call it, it's got to have some kind of like wholesale piece in place, because otherwise you can't take advantage of everything you come across. But the second part of the question, I mean, I've noticed it significantly in the years that I've been doing this. I mean, it's super competitive, especially, I only, I only operated in DC, Virginia area, but DC area up to Baltimore, but I don't do lots of different markets like a lot of people do. I'm not like a big subscriber to that idea. I feel like you need to know the market you're working in order to not miss on the offers. But that said, it's super competitive here. So almost anybody that I would or somebody at my company would meet with is meeting with or has met with other investors already. In many cases, they're meeting with one or more real estate agents. The deals are always competitive. I mean, maybe once a year, somebody will just be like, we'll meet, just be like, okay, like, but it's almost always competitive. It's usually like 3, 4, 5 investors. And obviously the offer amount is a big consideration for them. So yeah, you have to be able to win competitive business in order to make this business model work. And that's a whole nother ball. It's super competitive.
What do you feel like you're doing to help differentiate people to choose you versus choosing some of the other folks out there?
It's my jokes primarily, Mike. That comes. Yeah, I have a lot of dad jokes that I tell in these meetings that go over very well. So I'm not really a salesperson by nature. So I mean, I'm an attorney. I think once you go to law school, Mike, your personality gets like 20% worse as well. So, um, like I have, but I've never been like, I'm just not like a natural salesperson. I'm more kind of like, I don't know, structure attorney type personality. So for me, I had to kind of figure out how to do a presentation that worked for my personality. It took a long time and a lot of trial and error. I sort of have a process that I go through with every seller when I go and sit down with them, walk them through, and sort of a way to present what it is that we could do. And has been sort of fine tuned and honed over the years. I teach it through 1K flips, for people who are trying to get better and close more business on appointments. But it is, a process that's like credibility based rapport, and you get people to feel comfortable with you, because at the end of the day, sort of my view of it, I mean, sort of the investing world is like the Wild West, right? Like you don't have a real estate agent who's representing you. It's just a seller who's out there fielding offers, kind of have to manage the terrain themselves. There are a lot of like bizarre investors out there, right? So they may meet with five people and kind of be like, oof, like kind of a wild group of people. But so I think a lot of sellers, more so than maybe like if you're interviewing to be a real estate agent to a seller, sellers like really value, okay, I feel like I can like trust this person and he or she knows what they're talking about. They explained it and I understood when they explained it. I trust that they're going to deliver, blah, blah, blah. I think that counts for many sellers as much as price. Because I think a lot of sellers are already skeptical or kind of like, ugh, like I'm sort of on my own for making a crazy decision with my house and I feel like all these, different people that I don't know. So for me, that's been a big part of like developing the presentation that I use, helping to get sellers feel comfortable just with me and company, so that when it inevitably comes down to like all the prices are pretty close, that we win more of those competitive deals.
Mm-hmm. Now you talked about wanting to be able to help other people, and you've got your kind of coaching and training that you're helping others with. So talk about that for a little bit, what you're focusing on and how you're helping people based on all the stuff that you learned, and they don't have to go through those same learning curves that you did.
Yeah, so I started sort of like a coaching component. It's called 1,000 Flips. The website is 1kflips.com. And I teach, it's designed for people who are, just like you said, want to get involved in investing and they're either new or maybe they still work. They're still operating have a full-time job, but they're trying to get into it, or if they have, for the huge segment of investors out there who are doing maybe 1, 2, 3 deals a month that want to get to 10 or 15, don't really want to expand on their business. So I do training that is got sort of different levels of training, but I do like something I call Deal Club, which is it's $97 a month. It's inexpensive. It's 4 calls every month, one a week, and I basically go through one or more components of sort of just running this business each week. Sometimes I'll talk to different members of their businesses, what their challenges are. I'll talk about marketing, sales, inside sales, different things like that. And so that is a good option for people who really anybody, because you can get a lot of info out, and it's inexpensive. And then I do something called Business in a Box for people who really want to really ramp up their business and are kind of all in. They're like, I want to learn how to do flipping, wholesaling, how do I run this business? How do I start it? How do I find deals? How do I market? Sort of A to Z. And that's a more comprehensive, that's like a 10-week course that I offer.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's so much to learn, and you guys figured it out pretty quick compared to a lot of people. But there's the ability, and this is what I always encourage folks: is instead of trying to figure it out on your own, partner up with somebody who knows what they're doing. Partner up with somebody who's been there before, because you don't have to make the same mistakes. They can get you much further, much faster. And I know there's a lot of people out there that say, "Well, the internet's got all the information I need." Possibly, and yet at the same time, you kind of need to know for your situation what's the most relevant piece of information for where you need to go next, because there might be the next lesson is a few degrees ahead of where you're at, and you're not ready to hear that yet. You need to hear the lesson that's your next step, not 3 or 4 steps ahead, and you need to be able to apply that next step. And so that's really where partnering with people who have done it before really makes a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly does. And I think, we have a history of that sort of along this path that I've been on too. uh, worked with and partnered with different people over the years. And it's made a difference. And I can say that for for sure. And it has sped up the process. I mean, there's just some things that a lot to figure out. You can't really go to school per se to learn how to be a wholesaler. So you've got to sort of, there's just a lot of figuring it out sort of aspect of this business. And, if you can find somebody that you trust in your market, you can probably figure it out. So,
have you ever heard the phrase, you're the average of the top 5 people that you hang around? Well, real estate agents, I'm excited to increase your 5 with you. We're launching the Real Freedom Investor Agent Tribe to help you get educated and connect with others to build your real estate investing journey, and also to help you along the way as you're working with real estate investors. So come check it out on our website, realfreedom.com. Go to the store. We have a membership, we have a mastermind group, and private coaching to help you stay accountable to your real estate investing goals and to make sure that you connect with like-minded people to accelerate your progress and to cheer you on along the way. Check it out, realfreedom.com. Click on the store. Awesome. Well, I know you mentioned, 1kflips.com. So yeah, if people want to go there and check things out, anything more that you want to close with here, Kevin?
You can go, as you said, to 1kflips.com and check everything out there. You can also schedule yourself for like a free 15-minute Zoom meeting if you want to learn more information. Any of the coaching products too.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kevin, so much for coming on and sharing your story. And it's so fun to see people kind of jump into the real estate industry, have success. And so you've built a team of 25 people. So amazing job with that, and best of luck to you in the future.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks for having me.